The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the Caribbean haze when the first warning lights flickered to life across Venezuela's military network. Within minutes, every radar station, every command post, every fighter squadron from the coast to the interior received the same chilling message. Full combat readiness. This wasn't a drill. Somewhere out over the turquoise waters, American bombers were approaching, and the entire Venezuelan military machine had just switched from peacetime operations to a posture that assumed war could ignite at any moment. Fighter pilots sprinted to their cockpits, ground crews yanked protective covers off missile systems. Commanders barked orders into encrypted channels while satellite imagery streamed across glowing screens in darkened bunker rooms. The tension was visceral, electric, the kind that makes your hands shake and your heart hammer against your ribs. After years of simmering hostility and rhetorical threats, the standoff between Washington and Caracas had suddenly escalated to something that felt dangerously close to actual combat. The timing couldn't have been more explosive. Just days earlier, President Trump had personally called Venezuelan President Maduro in what intelligence sources described as one of the most direct ultimatums delivered between heads of state in recent memory. The conversation was reportedly brief and brutal in its clarity. Trump offered Maduro a choice: leave power voluntarily with safe passage guaranteed for him and his family, or face the full weight of American military intervention. There were no diplomatic niceties, no room for negotiation. Pack your bags and go, or watch everything you've built get dismantled by force. Maduro's response, according to those who've heard whispers from inside the presidential palace, was defiant but calculated. He'd consider stepping aside, he suggested, but only if he could maintain control over the military apparatus, the one institution that had kept him in power through years of sanctions, protests, and international isolation. It was a non-answer disguised as negotiation, and everyone knew it. You can't surrender power while keeping the guns. Trump reportedly ended the call with a warning that the window for peaceful resolution was closing fast. Within 72 hours of that phone conversation, Venezuela held a massive Air Force Day parade, a show of strength clearly designed to signal that Maduro wasn't going quietly into exile. The skies over Caracas thundered with the roar of jet engines as Venezuela's pride. Its Sukhoi Su-30 fighters and American-made F-16 fighting Falcons screamed overhead in tight formations. It was political theater with a military edge, a message broadcast to both domestic audiences and Washington's war planners. The subtext was unmistakable. If you're coming for us, we're ready to make you pay for it. But everyone watching knew the imbalance in firepower. Venezuela's Air Force, while capable, was aging and undersupplied. The Sukhoi 30s, purchased from Russia back in the early 2000s, were formidable machines in their day, twin-engine beasts with super maneuverability and the ability to carry a lethal array of weapons. These were Russia's answer to the American F-15, stretched airframes with extra fuel capacity and engines that could push them past Mach 2. The Venezuelan variants lacked the thrust vectoring that made Russian Su-30s truly dangerous in dogfights, but they were still capable platforms in the hands of competent pilots. Each Sukhoi Su-30MK2 in Venezuela's inventory comes equipped with a L-31 FP turbofan engines, generating roughly 27,000 pounds of thrust per engine when afterburners kick in. That's enough raw power to punch these machines up to 62,000 feet in a climb so aggressive can make experienced pilots see stars at the edges of their vision. The aircraft carries external pods for maritime strike missions and electronic warfare capabilities, equipment designed specifically to jam enemy radars and communications. In theory, these flankers could pose a genuine threat to American carrier groups, especially if they managed to get close enough to launch their anti-ship missiles before being intercepted. The Russians built these jets tough, over-engineered them with redundant systems and armor that could absorb punishment. They're the airborne equivalent of Soviet tanks, designed to take hits and keep flying. Against most adversaries in Latin America, Venezuela's Su-30 fleet would be downright intimidating. Against the United States Navy and Air Force, they represented a dangerous but ultimately overmatched force. Then there were the F-16s, a bitter irony given their American origin. Venezuela acquired these fighting Falcons years ago when relations with Washington were less toxic, and they'd become a key part of the country's air defense network. These were single-engine fighters powered by Pratt & Whitney F-100 engines producing around 25,000 pounds of thrust, capable of hitting Mach 2 and perfect for short-range patrol missions along the coastline. The F-16 was designed as a lightweight, agile dogfighter. And even though Venezuela's models were older variants without the latest avionics upgrades, they were still deadly in the right hands. The limitation was range. Without aerial refueling capability, which Venezuela lacked, these F-16s could only patrol relatively close to their bases. They'd be useful for quick scrambles to intercept threats near Venezuelan airspace. But they couldn't project power far out over the Caribbean where American forces were gathering. Still, armed with AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles and potentially Russian-supplied R-77 radar-guided missiles, even these aging F-16s could pose problems for American aircraft if they caught them in the wrong position. The weapons loadout on Venezuela-JES combat aircraft became the focus of intense speculation among military analysts as the red alert continued. The Sukhoi 30s carried R-77 active radar-guided missiles, weapons with an estimated range exceeding 60 nautical miles. That meant a Venezuelan fighter could theoretically take off from a coastal base, stay low to avoid radar detection, and launch at an American bomber patrolling along the maritime border before the Americans even knew they were under attack. The R-77 uses its own onboard radar to guide itself to the target, meaning once it's launched, it's hunting on its own. It's not the kind of missile you can easily fool with flares or chaff. Then there were the AA-12 Adder missiles, infrared guided weapons perfect for close-range dogfights. These were all-aspect missiles with off-bore sight capability, meaning they could lock onto targets, even if the launching aircraft wasn't pointed directly at them. In a swirling knife fight between fighters, that capability could mean the difference between a kill and getting killed. Venezuelan pilots had been trained to exploit that advantage, to get into visual range and fire before their opponents could react. But the weapon that really had American naval commanders losing sleep was the KH-31 anti-ship missile. This was a supersonic threat, a missile specifically designed to kill aircraft carriers and their escort ships. The KH-31 could be launched from over 100 nautical miles away, accelerate to speeds exceeding Mach 3, and use active radar homing with built-in electronic countermeasures to penetrate ship defenses. Intelligence reports confirmed that Venezuelan Su-30s had been photographed carrying these missiles during training exercises. If Maduro decided to go all in during the confrontation, a coordinated strike by multiple Su-30s launching KH-31s at the USS Gerald R Ford, the American supercarrier now operating somewhere in the Caribbean, could potentially overwhelm the ship's defense systems. It would be a suicide mission for the Venezuelan pilots, almost certainly, but it'd also be a propaganda coup and a strategic nightmare if even one of those missiles got through. The Americans couldn't ignore that possibility. On the other side of this lopsided equation sat the full weight of American air power, a collection of assets so advanced and so numerous that the disparities seemed almost unfair. The carrier strike group centered on the USS. Ford represented floating air power that exceeded the entire Venezuelan Air Force several times over. The Ford's air wing included F/A-18E/F Super Hornets, twin-engine multi-role fighters with a combat radius of 1,000 to 100 nautical miles and top speeds around 1,200 miles per hour. These Super Hornets carried AIM-120, MRAM missiles with greater range and more sophisticated guidance systems than anything Venezuela possessed. The American pilots flying these jets had thousands of hours of training, combat experience from conflicts across the Middle East and beyond, and access to real-time intelligence from a network of satellites, drones, and airborne early warning aircraft. The Su-30 pilots might be brave, but bravery doesn't overcome that kind of technological and tactical superiority. Then there was the nightmare scenario for any adversary, the F-35 Lightning II. Multiple F-35s had been deployed to Puerto Rico and Florida in the weeks leading up to this crisis, stealth fighters that represented a generational leap in capability. The F-35 SAPG-81A ESA radar could detect and track targets at ranges that would leave Venezuelan fighters blind and helpless. The jet's stealth characteristics meant it could penetrate deep into defended airspace without being detected until it was far too late. A Venezuelan radar operator might see nothing on his scope right up until the moment American missiles started destroying his aircraft and installations. The F-35 could coordinate with other friendly aircraft, share targeting data across the entire battlespace, and essentially act as an airborne command post while simultaneously hunting enemy fighters. Against fourth-generation aircraft like the Su-30 and F-16, The F-35 wasn't just superior, it was operating in a completely different dimension of warfare. The Venezuelans would be fighting blind while the Americans saw everything. American B-52 strategic bombers had been conducting highly visible patrols along the Venezuelan coast, flights clearly designed to demonstrate American resolve and capability. These massive 8-engine bombers, though ancient in design, remained potent symbols of American air power, but they were also vulnerable, slow-moving targets that required constant protection from fighters. That's where the E-2D Hawkeye came in, an airborne early warning aircraft equipped with powerful radar systems that could detect threats hundreds of miles away and vector friendly fighters to intercept them. The Hawkeye's radar was so powerful it effectively gave American forces eyes over the entire region, tracking every aircraft that took off from Venezuelan bases in real time. Combined with MQ-9 Reaper drones conducting persistent surveillance and RQ-4 Global Hawk, high-altitude reconnaissance platforms mapping the battlefield from the stratosphere, the Americans possessed an intelligence picture that was essentially omniscient. Venezuelan commanders could barely move a jeep without satellite imagery capturing it within minutes. The Venezuelan response to this overwhelming American presence had been to activate not just their air force, but their entire integrated air defense system. The S-300 surface-to-air missile batteries supplied by Russia years ago had been brought to full alert status and repositioned to cover likely American approach routes. The S-300 was a serious system, capable of engaging multiple targets simultaneously at ranges exceeding 100 miles. These weren't weapons you could simply ignore or fly around. They had to be suppressed or destroyed before American aircraft could operate freely over Venezuelan territory. The Trump administration's decision to close airspace over parts of the Caribbean suddenly made more sense in this context. With both sides on hair-trigger alert and sophisticated weapon systems tracking everything that moved, the risk of accidentally shooting down a civilian airliner was terrifyingly real. Better to clear the skies entirely than risk that kind of catastrophe. Intelligence analysts were gaming out multiple scenarios for how this confrontation could get hot. One possibility involved Venezuelan Su-30s scrambling to intercept American P-8 Poseidon, maritime patrol aircraft conducting surveillance operations just outside Venezuelan territorial waters. Imagine 4 Su-30s launching from La Orcala, an austere base on a Venezuelan island, loaded with R-77 missiles and vectored toward a P-8 cruising at 25,000 feet. The lead Venezuelan pilot acquires the target on radar, locks up, and fires. But the Americans aren't flying blind. An AA-18G Growler equipped with advanced electronic warfare systems detects the radar, emissions from the Su-30s, and floods the airwaves with jamming signals spoofing the missiles, guidance systems, and causing them to lose track of the P-8. The R-77s burn through their fuel and tumble harmlessly into the ocean, while the P-8 banks hard and sprints for international airspace. Crew members' adrenaline spiking as they realize how close they came to disaster. Another scenario was even more dramatic. Intelligence leaks suggesting that U.S. Navy SEALs were preparing for a high-value target operation, possibly a raid to capture Maduro himself or senior regime officials. Maduro responds by ordering his F-16s to launch a preemptive strike against American helicopters staging near Aruba. 6 F-16s scream in at low altitude, trying to stay under radar coverage, aiming to destroy the helicopters before the SEAL insertion can begin. But F-35s orbiting at 50,000 feet detect the Venezuelan fighters the moment they take off. The stealth fighters descend like hawks, achieving radar lock and firing volleys of AIM-120D missiles from beyond visual range. One by one, the Venezuelan F-16s are blown out of the sky, their pilots never seeing the enemy that killed them. One F-16 manages to evade the initial missile barrage and closes to visual range with an F-35. But the American pilot calmly locks an AIM-9X Sidewinder using helmet-mounted cueing and fires. The Venezuelan jet disintegrates in a fireball, and the path to Caracas is clear for the helicopters to complete their mission. These weren't just academic exercises. With Venezuela's military on full red alert and American forces arrayed in overwhelming strength just offshore, any miscalculation, any trigger-happy pilot or panicked commander could ignite a shooting war within hours. The whole region was holding its breath, watching to see whether Maduro would blink, or whether his defiance would lead to the first conventional military confrontation between the United States and another nation in years. The Venezuelan leader was backed into a corner, surrounded by advisors who might be more interested in their own survival than giving him realistic assessments. He built his political career on anti-American rhetoric and resistance to Washington's pressure. Walking away now, even with safe passage guaranteed, would mean admitting defeat, abandoning his supporters, and potentially facing prosecution at some future date if international courts ever got their hands on him. But staying meant gambling everything on the hope that American resolve would crack, that political pressure back in Washington would force Trump to back down before committing to military action. The reality was that nobody knew what would happen next. Would there be a diplomatic off-ramp that allowed Maduro to save face while relinquishing power? Would Russian or Chinese intervention complicate American plans? Would the Venezuelan military, seeing the impossible odds they faced, stage a coup and hand Maduro over to save themselves? Or would pride and miscalculation lead to air combat over the Caribbean? A brief but intense conflict that would leave Venezuelan air power destroyed and American forces in control of the country's airspace and coastline. Every day the red alert continued. The probability of accidental escalation increased. Radar systems on both sides were tracking countless contacts. Pilots were sitting in ready rooms, strapped into cockpits, waiting for launch orders. Missile batteries had targets pre-programmed into their fire control systems. All it would take was one mistake, one misidentified aircraft or unauthorized weapons release, and this crisis would explode into open warfare. The Venezuelan Air Force was ready as it could be given its limitations. The American forces were ready, overwhelmingly so. And somewhere in Caracas, Maduro was weighing his options, knowing that every choice led to consequences he might not survive. The Caribbean had become a powder keg, and the fuse was burning shorter by the hour.